Welcome to another in my lessons of first principles on the traditional crafts, heritage crafts. There are a lot of different kinds of knots. Clifford Ashley's Book of Knots, the Ashley Book of Knots, is still available, and it's a great reference for learning how to tie all of the different knots that have been used in the traditional crafts. One of the we're going to tie the square knot, and that's generally used, should be used as a hitch. It's the knot that everybody knows how to tie. And then we're going to tie the sheep bend, which is the knot that everyone should know how to tie. I believe that the reason that the square knot is a knot that almost everybody remembers is because in the scouts with the packs and traveling, there's always stuff to tie together, and there's always stuff to bind to a pack if you're out in the woods. And there's no knot that's handier than the overhand square knot or the reef knot. So the reef knot is an overhand knot, and then another overhand knot in the opposite direction, so that the end result is a very symmetrical knot. It's a very simple knot. It's a very elegant knot, and it really only has one application. And that one application is to bind a load. And binding a load, it's unsurpassed. There's nothing better. But where this knot is used inappropriately and incorrectly is in tying two lines together. And there's no more dangerous knot that you can tie if you're going to use it as a bend, because this knot will flip over, especially if the lines are of different sizes. And when it flips over just like that under a load, it makes a lark's head, and the other line comes undone. And when that line comes undone, if it's very long and it's under a lot of load, it'll spring right back to the person that's putting the strain on the line. And this knot by itself, used inappropriately, is, in my opinion and in Clifford Ashley's opinion, is responsible for more deaths and more danger by itself than all the other knots combined. So don't use a reef knot or a square knot for a bend. And a bend is to put two lines together. That's what the sheep bend is for, and that's the knot that everyone should know how to tie. So for binding and as a hitch that ties something to something else, like the stuff that you'd put on a pack, the square knot, that's really the only application for the square knot. It really shouldn't be used anywhere else. Now, to tie the sheep bend is it's relatively easy to tie, and I always start a sheep bend with a reef knot, and I turn the knot where the line that's traveling away from me, the loop in the square knot, is up, and then that makes it very easy to turn the reef knot into the sheep bend. So to do that, you take the end of the line that's traveling away from you, and you put it between itself and the loop of the reef knot, and bring it out on the side. And that knot right there, when strained, becomes the sheet bend. So the sheet bend is used to tie two lines together of equal or different diameters, and will give the greatest mechanical strength that the line can have if the binding of two lines is necessary. I've read that generally that this knot, the sheep bend, will give you about 60% of the strength of the line. And with rope, a rope or a line, you always want to have a whole lot more. You don't want to lift 200 pounds with a rope that's good for 200 pounds. You want to lift a couple of hundred pounds with a line that's got a much greater working strength. It just makes good sense, and for safety purposes, anytime a heavy load gets loose, generally bad things always happen. Whether the thing that you're lifting breaks, we'll say that you're lifting a piano, you don't want to drop it. If you live with bricks, it don't matter, but the bricks will go all over the place and hurt you. So again, to bind a line together, and let's tie the reef knot or the square knot again. In the reef knot or the square knot is a good entry for a practice in the steps of tying the sheet bend. So the reef knot or the square is an overhand knot, and then another overhand knot in the opposite direction that gives the symmetry, the binding symmetry to the knot. And this is good as a binding knot to hold stuff to a pack, to hold things in a truck that you want to carry. And I always will put a couple of half hitches in the line on either side of a reef knot on a load, just to be extra safe and extra secure, because you don't want stuff flying out of the back of your truck. So the square knot or the reef knot as an entry practice, as the steps in tying, that's a granny, as the steps in tying the sheet bend is a convenient and easy way to remember the sheet bend. It's the way I always will start a sheet bend. So again, work the bites of the reef apart. Have the loop of the line that's traveling away from you sticking up. Hold that with your thumb, and then you can work the knot. And to work that knot is that you take the opening between the loop that's on your side, the loop that is of the line that's on your side, and you take the end of the line that's traveling away from you, and you put that between itself and the loop on the opposite side of your hand, and that becomes the sheet bend. So you can see that really it's just a half hitch on a loop. The sheet bend is just a half hitch on a loop. So here's the loop, and here's the line that comes through, and it goes here, and then that binds it to itself. And it doesn't look like it would stay bound, and it won't stay bound as a hitch, as a knot that you use to tie something together. It'll just slip apart. But for holding two lines together, for lifting, it's the only safe knot that you can tie. It's the simplest of all the bends to tie, and it's very easy to remember as when you use the reef knot as an entry practice for making the sheet bend.